Hello, welcome. My name is Susan Strom, and I'm the Chief Client Officer here at Knowledge Architecture. With me today is Todd Henderson, Director of Practice Improvement at Boulder Associates, and Christopher Parsons, the founder and CEO of Knowledge Architecture. You are joining us for a KA Connect deep dive, where we share stories of how clients are using synthesis to help evolve and grow their teams through knowledge management. Today, we're going to get like an AI smorgasbord from Todd. We're going to hear how he uses AI to help translate tacit knowledge that is in experts' heads into explicit knowledge assets that other people can use. And then we're going to hear how he's using synthesis AI search to mine that knowledge and get answers to the people who need them. To get us started, I think it would be good for us to clarify what synthesis AI search is and when it will be available. So Chris, I will hand it over to you for that.
Yes. For those of you that are clients of ours, don't be confused. Todd is going to be showing you things you do not have access to yet. Todd and Boulder Associates are in the private beta for AI search, which is coming to public beta, meaning anyone that wants access can get it in December. If you aren't a knowledge architecture client, it's kind of the same thing. You're seeing an early beta of something that will be available in synthesis starting in December, something we've been building on for the majority of the year, and we're very excited to be sharing with everybody. Todd, I think that's it. I think I'm going to stop there and just pass it to you. Show us what you've been up to.
Lovely. Thanks, you guys. Thanks, everyone who's attending. So super excited to be sharing what I'm up to. So this is me. I've been with Boulder Associates, 22 years this month, actually. So for a minute. And I've held kind of every role. I mean, been here for a significant chunk of my career. And so you'll see some of that come through in a little bit. But my current role, I've stepped away from being an office director and kind of a practicing architect. And I'm now director of practice improvement. So I do things like this. Very briefly, Boulder Associates, we are an architecture and interior design firm, nationwide practice, about, 240 people today. We work in several market sectors, just to give a little context to kind of scale and what we're up to. And we are proud subscribers to Synthesis. We've worked with Knowledge Architecture for a long time. I think we are actually their first deployment of their Synthesis Intranet product, and we're very proud of what we've built. We call it Biscuitnet. And so I'll introduce Biscuitnet to you briefly. Here's what it looks like as of, probably yesterday. And let me show you what the AI search does. So maybe to explain, like, you might be thinking, biscuits, why biscuits? What's this whole biscuit thing? We name everything after biscuits at Boulder Associates. And so searching with Synthesis AI search now gives a really wonderful answer to the question, please tell me about biscuits. What you'll notice right off the bat, you may notice at the end of each paragraph, there's a little number in a bracket. And if you hover over that, it's a link, it's a live link to content on some spot around our intranet, around our site. And so search has given this kind of 360 view of this concept of biscuits. It's sourced from 6 different locations. And the truth is, as someone who's been at the firm, for a long time, I can read this and go, wow, that's right. And that's also that's not an answer. That answer you see is not an answer that you could just find on some specific page. It's a composite of everything. And I think that starts to point to what is, to me, really exciting about this advance in how our people are going to be able to relate to the knowledge on our site. Let me demonstrate a more sophisticated, a more substantial thing. Maybe an architect is just getting into understanding contracts and they're like, tell me about liability. Pretty complex topic. Here I'm hovering over the various sources. It's sourcing from posts, it's sourcing from pages. We did a University of Boulder Associates presentation earlier this year about key contract provisions with our insurance carrier. I love this. I love that it actually gives, again, that second paragraph is talking about liability in a completely different sense than probably most architects are thinking. We're thinking about getting sued by a client. This is, hey, with AI stuff coming out, we need to be careful about kind of our AI policy on the work that we're giving, so we're not doing, copyright infringement or things like that. And this technology makes it easier for the person to tunnel into whatever they were interested in, or just maybe this is what they need. Okay, so that's sort of the intro to me, the firm, and kind of our intranet. I'm gonna zoom this way out, low Earth orbit. And I want to talk at a high level about systems. Systems thinking is a thing I've come across that has it really informs a lot of how I look at organizational change and understanding how to get from where we are to where we want to be. W. Edward Deming has this wonderful quote, 94%. It's a very specific number. I don't know why it's 95, but 94% of problems in business are systems driven. How much of our management of what we consider to be a problem in our business do we ascribe to the system of our business and not to some person who is not doing the right thing? I think we tend to have it inverted. So I think Deming gets it right. So let's talk about systems. So the things that we tend to manage are the things that we tend to see. Events, right? Maybe we're unhappy one day because people aren't filling out their timesheets on time. So that's an event that we see. That's what's poking up above the water. But the key insight of systems thinking is that those events are truly the tip of the iceberg. There's all this stuff below the water that is actually incredibly powerful in informing what those events are. And so if you're just trying to push on the events to make them be different, you're pushing against something that ain't gonna move. Another insight of systems thinking is that when you push on a system, it pushes back. Systems regulate themselves. So very often, well, I'll come back to that thought in a second. Systems thinking has these diagrams oftentimes that people will draw called causal loop diagrams. And here's one about systems. It's a little bit meta. And it's just that actions lead to results, which lead to actions, right? There are these loops, these feedback loops everywhere. They're all over. You can learn to spot them. There's a pithy saying that I think makes a lot of sense, which is today's problems are the result of yesterday's solutions, right? That kind of gets at that, chicken and egg nature of the way systems work. And it informs and it changes our thinking, right? About looking for patterns and structures and not just yelling at someone who didn't fill out their timesheet. Donella Meadows was a really, really cool pioneering systems thinker. And she wrote this wonderful paper. It's available. You can Google it. You'll find it for free online. It's actually a really nice entry point into systems thinking. It's called leverage points, places to intervene in a system. And so she uses this metaphor of, like I talked about, we see events, someone didn't fill out their timesheet and we want to like yell at them. And that's at the low end of this kind of lever in this metaphor. You want to, oftentimes that's not enough to get a system to change. So she talks about different places you might intervene and that they have a different amount of leverage to retune a system to behave differently. So let me give here's her full kind of model here. Not going to go over this in detail, But I want to pick out three things. And I'll start closest to the fulcrum, the black bold one, stocks and flows. That's systems jargon. But for our purposes, you can call that like events, things that happen. Someone filling out a timesheet, something like that. Midway up and in red is information flows. And I picked that out because that's what I'm kind of talking about today. And I think as knowledge management folks, this is where we put a lot of our thought. And in Meadows' model, I mean, the creation or improvement of a flow of information is a pretty strong leverage point to get a system to do something different. Sometimes giving people access to a stream of knowledge changes a whole lot of stuff. It's kind of cool. Maybe some of you have seen that in action. The last thing I'll pick out is way up towards the top, mental models. And there's an important thing there, and I will kind of come back to that, but the beliefs that we hold as individuals have a lot to do with the behaviors that we are going to exhibit in the world. The beliefs and values that our organizations espouse and actually live are determinant to everything else that's going to happen. So sometimes that's the place you have to get leverage to make things move. Let me give a more concrete example. Hopefully this is something that maybe people will sort of have some lived experience with. I know I do. Managing a healthy weight, right? If you have ever struggled with your weight, I certainly have, then you have been told, well, all you have to do is eat fewer calories than you burn. You're like, uh-huh. And yet somehow that isn't enough of a leverage point, is it? At least not, it wasn't for me and not for most people. That's right down there. That's just sort of saying, eat less, put the donut down. It's not enough oftentimes. Well, what points of leverage might be stronger in this model that Meadows sets out? Here's some, right? And I use the same colors. So observing your weight versus your caloric intake. That's an information flow. That can be a very powerful motivator. And in fact, the next one up, frequent weigh-ins and food logging. There's an author, I forget his name. He wrote a book in the last year or two where he tried every diet he could find, including like some really stupid, I mean, overtly stupid diets, like eat nothing but cabbage or that kind of thing. And his concluding takeaway is, look, you have a diet and it requires you to weigh yourself frequently and keep track of what you eat, it's probably going to work. That is really where it's at, because it's creating a data set that creates an information flow from a systems point of view. Powerful, powerful lever. Last point on this example, just to kind of drive the point home, is that's all well and good, but if a person has limiting beliefs about weight loss, about weight, about their value, about whatever, it could be 1,000 things, then nothing else you do may be enough of a leverage point to change how that system, that human beings as a system works. So I hope that was a kind of a relevant example to some folks of a way to think about this model. Let's turn it around and kind of come back to the theme of today, where probably a lot of us feel this way. Our subject matter experts aren't sharing their knowledge enough, right? Dang those guys. So sometimes the instinctual management response is yell at the subject matter experts. You need to share more. So that's an example of trying to manage kind of at the event level, the individual behavior level. What I would ask folks to do is suggest what are some interventions that maybe lie farther up the lever here from a systems point of view that might be more resourceful, might offer more leverage, more insight into the situation. So I'll stop talking for a minute. I've got an eye on the chat, and I'd be curious if people have any ideas.
Todd, could you restate the question one more time?
Yeah. So if what we want to do in an organization is get subject matter experts to share their expertise more, right? Get it spread around, not locked in their heads. And we acknowledge that just yelling at them, grumbling at them to share more is an insufficient point of leverage. What might we do that is higher up in this kind of in Donella Meadows' model? Pizza has been suggested. Bill, welcome, Bill. As a leverage point, sure. Pizza. Maybe Meadows missed pizza as a point of leverage. I like that. But incentives, right? Certainly. So I'm seeing cool stuff. Show how they're sharing benefits them and the firm. Yeah, that I would sort of call that kind of an information flow. Have anyone else noticed that when you ask people to do any kind of data entry and they can't tell where it goes, it just, from their perspective, it goes into a hole, they will stop doing it. But when they see, wow, this actually makes a difference, that's a powerful motivator. Lead by example and share yourself first. I love that. Appeal to their interests. This is great. This is good stuff. So whoops, gotta get back to the right screen. Here's a few that I, seeded here. And I'll start at the top. If your organization doesn't value learning, it may not matter. Anything else you do may not matter, because the system, if it doesn't value learning, it does value other things. And everything else about the system is going to be responding to what is a value, not just an espoused value on your website, but like an actual lived value. You could have a goal as an organization, perhaps from a strategic plan. Holy buckets, we got a whole bunch of people about to retire. We need to get on the move to train some folks up. Remove barriers, right? The structure of the system. Why is it so hard for subject matter experts to share their knowledge? Maybe there's a structural reason, and spoiler alert, that's what I'm talking about today. I'll give another one. You could have a rule. Rules in a system are powerful, a strong leverage point. So you could say, hey, you know what? That's it. You don't get your bonus unless you share 12 times a year. Anyone see a problem with that? So if we say that today's problems are a result of yesterday's solutions, what are tomorrow's problems? You want to be careful, right? Intervening in systems, because oftentimes we push the wrong thing, or we push a thing the wrong direction. If you make a rule like this, you will get that thing. People will contort their behavior. They're like, okay, if that's what's important around here, I'm going to share something, and you're probably going to regret that choice. So just a note of caution. Okay, enough theory. We're zooming in. I want to talk a little bit more practically about kind of this topic, right? We have experts who know a whole bunch of great stuff. We want that spread into other people's brains. How might we go about that? So, I've been studying experts, and I've compiled a list of facts about them. I think it's pretty good. I think it kind of covers the territory. I've noticed experts love talking about their expertise. As an expert on some things myself, I love it. Love it, love it, love it. It feels good to talk about what you know about and to share it with the world. It's just pleasurable. It's not work. It's joyful. That's me. But I think that's not uncommon, right? Man, is it hard to get an expert to write about something, however, unless they happen to be an expert in writing, but that's kind of, if you went into architecture, it's a pretty safe bet you're not good at writing. So if you buy this, this model of true facts about experts, then it implies that in the structure of things, maybe the act of needing experts to write stuff down is the barrier that is limiting how much knowledge transfer we're actually able to get. And surely there are other ways to do this, right? All kinds of discussions about transfer of critical knowledge and shadowing and things like that. I'm sort of today focused on kind of capturing stuff and getting it on the intranet. So by necessity, it sort of winds up being a lot of writing. So what's the problem with writing? Just to state the obvious, it takes time and focus. You can't multitask. You gotta hunker in and sort of do it to do it well. Another true fact about experts is they don't have a lot of time and focus generally. Those are both in short supply. Being skillful at being a medical planner or an architect or whatever is not the same, does not imply skill at writing. We get skillful at the things that we do. We get skillful at the things we spend time doing. Here's another sort of system insight, right? So you're good at being an architect, so you get more practice being an architect, so you get better at being an architect, so you get more practice being an architect. Never in that loop are you getting better at writing. And finally, the tyranny of the urgent. Billable work, clients, deadlines, that stuff is urgent. It's not necessarily important from a strategic point of view, but it's always going to swamp stuff that doesn't have a fixed deadline. So how do we get around this? Stop having experts write stuff, right? So, and this is not a new idea. And sort of before, this year, last year, whatever, you would hear about firms who would have ghost writers. They'd have a writer on staff or just someone who was a competent writer or just had more time to write, interview somebody and then do the writing for them. It's expensive. It's expensive. We can do better. You know where this is going. You already know where this is going. There was a talk given yesterday by APQC that I attended, and they shared this really interesting graph about how far AI has come and how quickly in a whole bunch of mostly writing related tasks, reading, writing, comprehension tasks. And they say that like these models have met or exceeded human competence at these things. I think some of us are probably like, nah, that's not my experience playing with them, but I think the larger point is probably holds true that this is a good time to be using software to write stuff. So how do we do that? What I'm showing here is basically the first step is get an expert talking. They like to talk. They're happy to share. That's a low lift. Get it on video, transcribe the video, summarize the transcription, bada bing, bada boom, off you go. So I'll show how I do that. And just to make the point once again, these AI tools make some of these steps kind of nearly effortless, frankly. So zooming in further, let's talk tactics here. And first, I want to introduce you to Darci. This is Darci. I hope all of your organizations have a Darci because our Darci is amazing. She is my partner. She started our Orange County office. She is a absolute force of nature and we're a wizard as a medical planner, healthcare architect, strategic thinker. We all need Darcis, right? She's also incredibly busy, right? As a result, she is incredibly busy. And so I called Darci 2-3 weeks ago. So I got a weird email from a client that we both do some work for. And so I was calling to kind of ask her like, what's going on behind this? And long story short, there's like this kind of political thing going on between a person who works at this client working on legislation that was kind of trying to thwart the big state agency that manages healthcare projects in California. And it kind of, the wheels were falling off the wagon and things were getting weird. So she's telling me about this, and then she sort of pauses and she has this deep sigh of like, ah, I really need to share this. I just, when am I going to find the time to share this? And so I was like, you just talk to me about it. Let's meet. I have a process because I've been kind of developing this workflow on our corporate university sessions and, kind of other opportunistic, moments. It's like, Darci, all I need to do is get you for half an hour, I'll interview you, tell me the story, and then you're done. So here we are. I'm showing her summary from synthesis, and I want to make another point here. This is a great way to find out, like, holy cow, to say that Darci specializes in small remodels, that's probably 15 years, 10 years old. Clearly her profile's out of date. So nice way I probably wouldn't have gone to Darci's profile, frankly. So nice way to recognize and spot when we need an update to some stuff. And also just that last paragraph is in fact what I'm talking about today. So I interviewed Darci yesterday morning. If I had done this query, before yesterday afternoon when I posted the results, it wouldn't have had that. So it's just, I love that we're getting up to the minute live. This is the best knowledge that we have right now, kind of as a matter of course. Okie dokes. So here's my workflow at a glance. It probably looks worse than it really is. I'll step us through all of this. I put kind of rough times down at the bottom. For this context, if a longer video, everything would take a little longer. But I think the key point here is this is measured in minutes, not hours and not days. This is quick turnaround. So let's tuck into it. Step one, and not to be pedantic, because it kind of was a big deal, is schedule the meeting. When you open up Darci's calendar, it bursts into flames. This was her week last week. This is kind of not an uncommon week for Darci. I bet that the Darcis in your firms might have a similar experience. When I was office director for San Francisco, our San Francisco office, this was my calendar. Did not like that. That's a tough place to be. So when we're, talking about how come our subject matter experts aren't sharing? Well, spare a moment to reflect on what their life is like, at least sometimes, right? And so I come at this with a lot of empathy, right? Darci wants to share her knowledge. She is structurally incapable of sharing her knowledge if it takes a lot of her time because she's got so much on her plate. So I'm at pains to make this as easy and, dare I say, enjoyable for her as possible. So we rescheduled 4 times. Just because, of course we did, right? Including like last Sunday at 4 p.m. and that fell through, but we got it done. Small interlude. I realized I don't actually know how to interview a person. I've never done that, but you know what? I have AI tools that can at least give me some top level advice. So that was handy. Okay. Teams. We use Teams, Zoom, doesn't matter. Have the meeting, record the meeting, right? I think don't need to spend a lot of time on this. But here, the next step is trimming the meeting, doing a little bit of light video editing, but it's a good place to show the timeline. And I can talk about a little bit how I structured this encounter with Darci. We didn't just jump on a call and then immediately try to dive into the thing that I wanted to get out of her, because you need to settle in. You need to kind of, get comfortable. I need to reassure Darci, like, what's going to happen? Where's this going to go? Is she going to come out looking good in all of this? How's it going to go? What does she need to worry about? What am I covering? So we spent 10 minutes or so just kind of at a high level, like, okay, what is it kind of roughly? What do you want to talk about? What are the steps? What do we need to kind of go with this? I took notes, and then I facilitated an interview effectively, right? Where all she had to do is be Darci. And there was a moment where she's like, oh, so I don't have to worry about kind of getting to a conclusion. I'm like, nope. All you have to do, we're just going to talk. I'm going to lead us through what we've talked about. And you could just sort of see her shoulders drop a half an inch, right? Because she's like, cool, I can just be me. This isn't going to be so bad. A thing that I have learned about doing this sort of stuff is it's really natural and easy to just have this kind of a smudge from informal chatting. Hey, good morning. What'd you have for breakfast? Okay, let's talk about legislative things happening in the state of California. And it doesn't give you a good place to trim the video, to cut off that front stuff. So I always try to have like a moment of silence and then, good morning, Darci. You sort of pretend like we're starting a thing up. So that's a lesson I had to learn. Now, hopefully, if you try this, you won't have to. Okay. Back to our intranet, back to Biscuitnet. We have templates for pages like this. So gin up a template, drop the video into the template. Immediately, Synthesis is working in the background to generate the transcription. So that takes a few minutes. I might fill in some other information on the template to start getting the page ready while it works. And then the next step is editing the transcript. And I indulge this process a little bit. I spend some time on this. It could probably be done quicker. My thought is twofold. One, this is the raw feedstock for the rest of this process and for synthesis, AI search, and everything downstream. So it's worth investing in getting the transcript dialed in. But the other thing, maybe deeper than that, frankly, is as an architect, a whole lot of my awareness and professional obligation goes toward the accessibility of built spaces. And that is just drilled into me at a deep level. And it was a fairly recent awareness for me that, oh, accessibility applies to digital things as well. And knowledge architecture has been doing a lot of work on that because a lot of that burden falls on them as a software creator. But spare a moment to think about someone with low or no vision, or not vision, hearing, who can only access this, if they want to watch this video or listen to this video, watch this video. Without the audio, it needs to make sense because that's how they're going to access this. And so I think getting the punctuation right, to me, feels important because it makes the flow make a lot more sense. So enough on that. The transcription is great. Here, it heard size of the gym raids. That's pretty close to seismic upgrades. So you fix these kind of things, The organization that we're talking about in this case is called HCAI, HCAI. Can't blame AI for not getting that acronym right. H space KAI is a pretty good guess, but we can go to transcription optimization and just say, hey, anytime we see that, I want you to replace it with the proper acronym. And now I find this very satisfying. That's why I included it. Because now I never have to fix that again. Makes me happy. Okay, easy peasy. Download the transcript as a PDF. And we're off to our next AI tool. to generate a summary. Now, I have let's say fallen in love with, but I don't like where that's going. I really like Perplexity AI. It's kind of a wrapper on top of a bunch of large language models. You can choose from, gosh, 6 of them or so. I usually wind up using ChatGPT, but sometimes I'll play with different ones. A thing that I like in Perplexity, and I know ChatGPT, if you subscribe to that native, has this too, is the ability to create, they call it spaces. So you can have kind of like collections of your queries, but you could give them standing instructions. So for this one, I have one for doing just this thing. And I say, look, I'm going to give you a PDF transcript, and I want you to give me a detailed and accurate summary. About 1,000 words. I probably prefer bullet lists over paragraphs, that kind of thing. So it's a nice way to make it so that every time I come back to use this, I don't have to give it much in the way of instructions. So here we go. Dear AI, please summarize this conversation. Blah, 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 blah. Off it goes. Typically, you don't want to use the first result you get. You edit your query, you go, well, okay, I'd like this. I need a little bit more detail here. Ooh, this is too wordy, shorten that. I generally go back and forth for a while until I kind of get a result or pieces from several results, right? That feel like I'm starting to reach the sort of plateau. Maybe it's sort of 80% of where I want it to get to. And then copy paste into a word processor, and I do the final sort of hand editing of the text there. It pastes in kind of weird with the formatting turns into ASCII characters, so search and replace to fix that. And then, yeah, do the final editing there. Then we're back into synthesis, and I'm pasting it into the page that it's already been created. You can see it's sort of at the bottom. Most of the actual written content is cut off here, but you know what that looks like. Tune it up, usually tinker with it a little bit. I might add related resources. In this case, I was like, well, we're talking about the Hospital Facilities Seismic Safety Act. Let me give a link to some information if someone wants to drill into that, so on and so forth. And there you have it. Within, same day, we went from talking with an expert to I've got knowledge resources ready to go, shareable on our intranet. Generally write a post to, alert people that it's there. And cool. And then, again, just a touch base with Synthesis AI Search one more time. It's immediately available for searches on anything that sort of touches on that content. So if I search earthquakes, right? That first and second paragraph here are directly drawn from the post or the content that I just shared. Okay, that's it. Hopefully that doesn't seem hard, because there's nothing about this that's rocket surgery. There's a few steps along the chain, but they're pretty easy, frankly. And I've found it to be a really effective way to kind of gin up content quickly. Zooming back out. I'm going to zoom back out. I'm going to come back to systems thinking again. I talked at the top briefly about causal loop diagrams. So here's one that I think is relevant to what we're talking about today. And the way you read one of these is it's sort of this cause and effect loop. So the content on our intranet, as we have more content on our intranet, that increases the quality of our search results because there's stuff to find, right? The better our search results, the more people are finding what they're looking for, the more trust in our intranet as our sole source of truth, grows. And the more people trust our intranet as our sole source of truth, well, that's hard to say, the easier it is to justify investment in the intranet to make it even better, which leads to more content on the intranet, which leads to better search results. So this is what's called a reinforcing feedback loop. This is just a snowball rolling down a hill. This is colloquially called a virtuous cycle. We love this. And there are some sort of influences here that start to turbocharge this. Having a slick content creation workflow that makes it just that much easier to get content on the internet is a big boost. Having a really slick search technology that gives users a much more facile and intuitive reach into the content and brings it to them in a more meaningful way also supercharges this. So I find it pretty exciting. Last point on this slide, trust. Trust is a funny word to use. Trust, I could have said belief. I should have said, confidence. That's getting into the realm of mental models, mindsets, that kind of stuff. And I think that there is this connection. I mean, really, this is talking about creating information flows. But I think that the way you move the mental models of an organization sometimes isn't, you can't sort of say, hey, I want you to have a different mental model. I want you to believe in our intranet. Sometimes that's the result of other factors influencing it. So, okay, where do we go? Landing the plane here. I've talked about, this lever of information flows as a way to move our system, but move it where? To what end? And I think the classic answer, the canonical, the prime directive is we shall meet strategic business goals. Okay, am I right? And so cool. So, I mean, I would see taking this process I've described and using it for, I'm using it for a corporate university, right? So we have these kind of, lunch and learns, if you will, webinar sessions, but now they are also persistent knowledge resources on our intranet. With a written summary, they show up in search results. It just makes it that much more accessible to everybody. I could see using this for project knowledge reviews. I haven't done that yet. It's on my wish list. And we target content the way we normally do in the knowledge management world. I mean, search analytics. What are people looking for and not finding? I think will be, as that comes online, that'll be a potent source of insight. Quality control data. What are our QC people tired of fixing in our drawings? Let's use that as the feedstock to curate content so that people do work correctly the first time. Quality assurance beats quality control every day. Employee surveys. I surveyed our staff earlier this year for our corporate university program. I said, what do you need to know? What do you want to learn about to do your job? And I got this wealth of information. And it was, in a sense, it was not surprising. It was like, we want to know about design things, project management, financials, the stuff you'd think. But now I've got data on that. And so I'm laser targeting learning content based on what people have said they want. Of course, strategic plans. So strategic business goals, I think that's kind of the obvious thing, but I don't think that you can start there if you're sort of entering into this. And so I want to talk, I think this is my last slide, sort of about an opportunistic approach as a complement to strategic approach, but also perhaps as the necessary first step. So what I did with Darci was purely opportunistic. I was ready for it because I kind of honed this process, saw the opportunity, and happily was able to take advantage of it. And that starts to move, that's this connection between, an information flow, like the knowledge that Darci's sharing as a lever, as a place to push on the lever. But it starts to, these quick wins build credibility, they build your skills. I've learned how to interview at least a little bit, right? And it starts to fuel that virtuous cycle that I showed in the causal loop diagram. And I think that starts to move the organization, not only by increasing the knowledge available, but by also showing people that knowledge is a thing, that it's valuable, and a thousand other ways. My last thing here is a mental model of my own that I found was challenged and eroded by this. I had been thinking of our intranet as a place where mostly we put evergreen knowledge. We put stuff that's going to be true, has a long shelf life, because it's effortful to get stuff up there and to maintain it. And now I'm realizing, I think I think the math on that has changed. And I think it is within reach now to capture perishable knowledge, capture stuff that doesn't have a super long shelf life. This conversation with Darci that I talked about today, that's probably relevant for a year or two tops. And you know what? I am totally fine with that because it didn't take me all that much effort to get that shared and get it shared in a timely fashion. And I think that's a pure win. So that is what I've got. If anyone's interested, here's my QR code and there's my username on LinkedIn. And Chris, I think over to you for QA.
Yeah. Todd, that was awesome. Thank you for zooming out so far and then kind of going into the tactics. It was great to see that kind of range. I've got a few follow-up questions for sure, and I've seen some stuff in the Q&A.
Cool.
If you haven't added something to the Q&A panel, please do it now. And there's also an upvote feature that you can use to help get us prioritizing the questions. I want to come back to the kind of things you and I talked about in the lead up to this, around you kind of perfecting the machine, or at least improving the machine. And I think you interviewed like a Bluebeam expert, you interviewed like a Nuforma expert. So maybe start with some of those, how you got to those lower stakes kind of things before building up to someone like Darci, who's hyper busy, as you mentioned.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I wouldn't have tested this for the first time on Darci because the cost of failure would have been bad. Bluebeam, yeah, actually, it was a very software picks and clicks thing. We have not only do we have a Darci, we have an Emily, and our Emily is a Bluebeam wizard. She's amazing at it. And guess what? We don't have on our intranet. We don't have much content on Bluebeam, and that's been a request. And so I had a notion of like I want to try something, and Emily would be a safe person to try this with. And so it was in my judgment, a reasonable, like worst case scenario, I will write this by hand based on the recording, right? Best case, holy cow, I've figured something out. And so doing that and then doing the same thing with our corporate university presentations. We do these monthly now and kind of honing it on that process, where that case, no one was really expecting me to do anything different than just post the video. So it's a pretty low stakes way of kind of working out the kinks.
What was the biggest takeaway that you learned? Like, what was the biggest kink you had to work out?
I mean, there's little things about sort of the tool chain, like Perplexity loves to take a PDF. It will not accept any kind of Word document or like text file. But that's kind of fiddly. I want to have a better answer than the one that I do, which is this. Having a good, mindful, like clean start to edit the video. Video editing sucks. It's hard. And making that easy by being mindful about working with a presenter, if it's a PowerPoint, and saying, okay, I'm going to do some housekeeping, and then I'm going to give it to you, and I want you to take a breath before you start talking, because that's where I want to cut the video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Just some kind of facilitation skills, frankly.
Yeah. Yeah. We had a question, kind of going completely different direction. But it's kind of getting into your virtuous cycle a little bit. Bill Spalding wrote and asked about thinking about the new search. If you've had to remove data that's outdated and correct, or update data, like tell us about kind of that kind of quality workflow.
Yeah, and Chris, I might kind of give this back to you. So in the beta right now, the way it works is not, it doesn't wait. Doesn't have any kind of awareness of how outdated or old something is. And so it treats everything on our site kind of equally from to my eye. Um, Chris, I understand that that will change. So the way it works for us in the beta today, there's like, oh, geez, I need that ancient stuff to go away. I don't feel like that's going to be a problem going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good question, and you're right. We have not tuned the weighting. That's obviously going to be in the pretty high on our priority list in the next version. Uh, but there's still going to be a challenge. Like as much as we can say prioritize a post from 2024 about seismic upgrades versus one from 2014, there is a question if the only thing on your intranet is from 2014, like it could be that it's true. Like we don't know just because it's old doesn't mean it's wrong. Right. And so there is like the algorithm will help when there's competing content, but when it's I'm not actually getting a response from you. I'm kind of saying like this is kind of where this is going is we'll try and cover up as much as we can when it's obvious there's more relevant or more updated information. But if that's the only thing you have, it's like, are we suppressing something? Yeah. Anyway, you get it.
You know, there's a degree to which I see this as a feature, not a bug.
Mhm.
If this is a way that we start to notice, okay, we have some stuff that is outdated in a way that's unhelpful, but now we can detect it and spot it. Well, now we can manage it, right? And
Totally. And I think one thing that I've seen you doing and other people in the beta, as well as our team who's using it, is they're using the rating feature to basically say, this content's old. This is why this search didn't work. This content's old. I'm going to go fix it. And so that's a very it's a very useful workflow that you guys will all learn about soon.
yep.
Jim Martin asks if you found a way to get AI to do the interviewing part instead of you.
Is that I don't is that just Jim being funny? I don't know. No, I haven't. um, hmm. I haven't, and it wouldn't be high on my priority list because I think it's fun. I think that human interaction is nice. I think too that there's it is a lot of what I'm trying to do with this is make it not weird for the expert. They've got so many reasons not to do this. I want to remove as many of those reasons as I possibly can. So having it be uncomfortable, the discomfort of writing, right, is such an impediment. Well, cool, take that off the plate. But hey, Darci, I want you to talk to this AI in the void. Oh, I just don't see that working. You know, when I and maybe this is a better answer to your question about kind of what have I learned, what insights have I gotten. When I did that trial run with Emily about Bluebeam, one thing that I thought to do was get her an audience. And so I invited 4 or 5 folks that I figured could use that knowledge, like that live, like their time would be well spent, in the live event because now she's talking to people who are receptive to the information and that feels natural and she's delivering value in the moment. She's not speaking to a camera, by herself in a room feeling like a weirdo, wondering where this goes. And
Did you
so
have them ask her questions too, or were you the only person asking questions?
I let it be organic and
Yeah.
just, yeah, I figured the questions kind of add to the they're going to clarify things that are unclear or whatever. So I didn't facilitate that much. Uh, As I do this more, I see the role of the facilitation, you know, as a pretty important piece to it to getting just higher quality video.
Did you see one of the kind of things that if you combine your kind of lever and also your kind of virtuous cycle, if you take a different perspective on it, that from the lens of the SME, there could be a mental model that, Darci or Emily or people are carrying around that's like kind of like shame around sharing knowledge. It's like, I know I should be doing this, but I haven't been. But the burden feels so high. It's just like the shame vicious cycle. Whereas now, like, I wonder if you've seen shoots of like Emily wanting to do more of this with you or others because they know that it's actually easier and impactful and they can get out of that loop.
And Yeah. And that's a little bit what I was getting at about, right, like shifting the mental models, not by pointing at them and telling people to change what you believe, but by like showing what's possible. Um, an honest answer is to be determined, right? Because I've only been doing this kind of a couple of months, but already I'm seeing, if I sort of abstract a little bit, the more that virtuous cycle of the more we invest in our intranet, the more people are like, ooh, hey, I have something that should go on the internet. I'm seeing that lighting up a lot. And in a way, I see this specific thing I'm talking about as an accelerant to a
Got it.
lot of that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But
We have
you
other. Go
know,
ahead. Yeah,
you
please.
know that the next time I am talking to some subject matter expert in our firm and
Hmm.
they kind of go, I know I should share this. I'll say, have you seen the video, the thing I did with Darci?
Right.
Talk to Darci. This was really easy and fun.
Oh, that's where you go. Yeah. Yeah. So there's like a benefit to starting with lower stake stuff, but if you get somebody senior like Darci, then you can also point and say like, so you've got like a reference, at a very high level that will kind of
there's
vouch, right?
there's a quick tangent. There's a book called How Buildings Learn that I read forever ago, and
The
it has
brand.
this example,
Yeah.
Stuart Brand, of a person builds a house and then like they die or whatever. Their kids are like, it'd be nice to have a porch. And then their kids are like, it'd be nice. We need another room. So they wall in the porch.
Mhm.
And then their kids are like, it'd be nice. We'd like to have a porch. And so like everyone sees one step down the road. And I think that's kind of true. So I had a couple times now where something came up where it's like, holy buckets, this is a moment where I can do a full dive, like transfer critical knowledge, Dorothy Leonard, and that was walling in the porch before I built the porch. People were just like, I don't even know what the hell you're talking about. And they would just sort of back away slowly.
Yeah. Do the
So
simple thing first,
do
kind
the
of.
simple thing first.
Yeah. Todd, thank you so much for your generosity, not just your time now, but preparing and kind of bringing this. We're in a whole new era now with knowledge management, and uh, I think people like you and that are pioneering this and sharing with the rest of us will help us all get better. To that end, small plug if you didn't see it, K Connect 2025, we announced registrations open as of this morning. Our theme is unlocking the promise of knowledge management with AI. So if you like this topic, we're going to be spending a couple days talking about it next August. And Todd, thank you again. Thanks
Pleasure.
everyone for attending and your chats and your questions. And I will see you next time.
So long, everyone.